Hi, hello, good morning. Let's start off with the daily news analysis for your KAS examinations in English. We have picked up a couple of important articles from the Hindu, the Indian Express and Deccan Herald, and we've also picked up some of the important practice questions which are likely to be asked in your examination preparation. So what is that I'm doing? In case you have any queries while I'm discussing, you can also put it out on the comment section as well. What will I do? I'll pick up your comments, I'll answer your comments as well, so that this will be an interactive session. So what are you waiting for? Hit the like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel and also share it with your other aspirants as well. Let's get started and look into the first practice question and the first article for the day. The first practice question says, Sapphoreka varshaba, recently seen in news, is a species of. Is it a species of cat? Is it a species of frog? Is it a species of snake? Or is it a species of rhinoceros? The answer to this is, it happens to be a species of frog. So I see Aisha actually messaging good morning. Good morning Aisha. In case many of you are joining in, you can also put it on the comment section as well and we will answer all your queries. So the first question says Sapphoreka varshaba, because UPSC and KPSC examinations in the past have asked couple of questions as well. So they will ask you a species and they'll ask you what type of this species are we speaking about. So in this particular backdrop, Sapphoreka varshaba happens to be a species of frog. This happens to be very important from your preliminary examination point of view. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Hindu makes a reference to the new species of frog. So the first important parameter that we have to remember is with respect to the species of frog. So this is named as Sapphoreka varshabu. This is attributed to its behavior of coming out of the burrows during the early showers. According to the researchers, it has adopted to its urban setting, displaying behaviors and physical attributes that enable it to navigate the challenges posed by the urbanization. So we know for the fact that there is a concept called as the survival fitness. So whosoever adapts to the environment, they would be able to sustain their livelihood and they would be able to continue with their progeny. So even in the instant case, what we have is one of the species of the frog, and this species of the frog is able to adapt to the situations in the urban level. Since it is able to adapt to the urban levels, that is why it is able to sustain itself, and this new species comes out of the burrow and is present in the urban areas in the city of Bengaluru. This can be very important from your preliminary examination point of view. In case you have any queries with respect to this article, all that you have to do is drop in your comment in the comment section and I'll answer all your queries as well. But from the examination point of view, you will have to understand that it was discovered recently in urban Bengaluru and this happens to be a species of frog. That is all will be asked in your examination point of view. Now let's look into the next article. This article is picked up directly from your Deccan Herald newspaper. What is this article speaking about? The article here is speaking about what is called as the Green Index Toolkit. So this has been created and raised by the government of Karnataka. So Environment Department to assess sustainability of development projects in Karnataka with Green Index Toolkit. What is this Green Index Toolkit? Basically, whenever a development project is being initiated, the developmental project will likely have its own share of detrimental factors as well. It may have a significant impact on the environment as well. So if at all there is a significant impact on the environment, or it is gonna hit the environment in a very negative consequences and it can have certain negative ramifications as well, how am I gonna understand it? What we already have is the environment impact assessment. In addition to the environment impact assessment, what we have is one of the toolkits that has been created by the Environment Department. So the Environment Department has launched a Green Index, which basically happens to be a toolkit to assess and rank the sustainability of various government programs ranging from energy infrastructure to social forestry. So what do we understand by this? Basically, you have the government department, if at all it is executing a project, let's say for example, it is laying down the roads, that happens to be an infrastructure program, or for example, it is coming up with the energy reserve program. For example, a coal project will be initiated and they would be able to extract the energy out of it, or there is a hydroelectricity power project that is coming up in a particular state, and this state will basically look into whether the likely ramifications of the hydroelectricity project, whenever there is a construction of a dam, it leads to inundation of water in and around that particular region. This could likely impact the people, and these people will also have to be rehabilitated as well. So if at all the government is executing a certain project, it can be the development of roads, or it can be the development of infrastructure, it can be the development of railways, or for example it can be development of energy programs as well. In all these cases, what are the likely consequences, what are the likely ramifications that can attribute it to? In all these cases, a test will be conducted and they will also be given a benchmark titling as well. So basically, whenever a project is being executed, there will be a likely ramifications and causes. They will try and understand what is it all about. So as per the toolkit released by the department, the programs will be analyzed against 10 sub indicators under 6 themes. So there will be sub themes as well. These themes will be on the basis of a certain parameters, and the total score will be divided by the number of sub indicators applicable for each project, and finally an index score will be attributed. So the Forest Ecology and Environment Minister launched the program. The toolkit was aimed at encouraging departments to adopt environment friendly measures while taking up the projects, and development works will be given 4 ranks. Which are these ranks? 1, it will be green, light green, orange and red, based on the environment compatibility, with the department describing as the first such initiative in the country. So if at all it is a very good project, it will not have any environmental consequences, it is given a green signal. If it is given a light green, it means that there will be likely impact. It will not have any significant impact per se, but it may have a likely impact whose ramifications and negative consequences will be seen in a greater, let's say for example about 100 or 200 years down the lane. So the impact will be likely there, but it is lightly felt, that will be given green, that is light green. Then we have orange, that we have to be a bit apprehensive about it, which means to say that it will have a significant impact, but we also have to take some mitigation strategies for the same. And if it is a red, it clearly means it is for sure gonna have likely consequences. It is gonna hit the environment easily as well. Only then we have to be extra cautious whenever we are creating and coming up and executing a particular program. So what we have is green, light green, orange and red, and these are the impact that will be having on the environment because of a certain project being executed. The project will get scores based on the mandatory provisions for use of recycled resources, energy efficiency, use of renewable energy, reducing environment and ecological impact, waste management, pollution control measures, and steps taken towards sustainable management of resources. And that apart, when we speak about this green index, it further takes a look into the transparency as well. The department will put the analysis of all the analysis in the public domain, and there will also be a creation of what is called as the Green Index portal. The Green Index program was developed by the Environment Management and Policy Research Institute in association with the Indian Institute of Science. This can also be very important from your preliminary examination point of view. So they might ask you a question, especially the KPSC exams, that you have the Green Index program. It was developed by which of these institutions or organizations? So the Green Index program was developed by the Environment Management and Policy Research. It happens to be one of the research institutions, and added to it, this has also gelled up, collaborated with the Indian Institute of Science. So both of them have come together and they have raised this toolkit program. For the project proponents and contractors following the sustainable path will get the Union Government's Green Credit, an instrument which was introduced in October 2023 to incentivize environmental actions. These are some of the parameters that we have to remember from the preliminary and the mains examination point of view. In case you have any questions in this particular article, you can put it on the comment section, and meanwhile I'll answer all your queries as well. Now taking off to the next article for the day. What is needed from a governor is reticence. What is reticence? Whenever you're reading an article, you may encounter a word which you may not know. How do we improvise on our speaking, and how do we improvise on the way that we speak? And the more words that you have in your vocabulary, the better it is to present a same sentence in different kinds of meanings. So it is also said that when it comes to the spoken English, a person who would be able to command a lot of words, who has a lot of verbatim, who has a lot of vocabulary while he speaks, would be also able to command the interest of the people. So what is reticence here? Reticence is basically a restraint. Reticence is nothing but that you have to be reticent as well. You have to think before uttering something. So it is restraint that has to be imposed. So as and when you read a word, you also start implementing it as well. So as and when you write an article, or whenever you're writing an editorial, or you're practicing an article, or you're writing a wordings, you have to ensure that you use these words whenever you are writing it. Make use of these words and improvise by writing it, or make use of these words and also start speaking to the people as well. So this is where you will improvise on your language delivery as well as your writing abilities. So what is reticence? Reticence is nothing but restraint. So the author in this particular case goes on to say that the governor happens to be a constitutional position. What does the governor do? The governor basically wears two hats. In fact, if you are a student of public administration in UPSC or in public administration in the state level as well, what you have is there can be a questions with respect to governors. So whenever we have questions with respect to the governor, in fact, if I can vaguely remember, it was in 2014 or 15, there was a question that was asked in the public administration paper with respect to the governor. The governor wears two hats, analyze, or something like that. So what is this two hats that we are speaking about? The two hats basically symbolically represent the governor is the representative of the union government. So who appoints the governor? The governor is appointed by the central government. So this basically means that the governor is a representative of the central government at the state level, and at the same time he is also the head of the state as well. What happens at the central level, the same is also implemented at the state level. At the central level, what we have is a president. At the state level, what we have is the governor. At the central level, what we have is the prime minister. At the state level, what we have is the chief minister. So the president and the governor may be the head of the state, that is for the center as well as for the state governments. But who ultimately wields the power? It is the prime minister as well as the chief minister. So when it comes to the governor, he basically wears two hats, which means he is the representative of the central government, and at the same time he is also representing the state government as well. So what is this article speaking about? The article basically goes on to say that we have the governor who holds a constitutional position. Whenever the governor holds a constitutional position, he is just not a spokesperson. He is just not a spokesperson of a political party. He has to be very cautious about what he is speaking because he happens to hold a constitutional position. If it is the chief minister, or if it is, let's say, a prime minister or the minister, they would be able to voice out their opinion because they represent a political party. They represent a political ideology. They represent a certain section of the people, and at the same time they voice out their opinion because the politics asks them to speak out as loudly as possible. But when it comes to the governor or the president, they hold a significant position. They hold a constitutional position. They have to be very cautious in what they are uttering and in their wordings as well. So in the recently we had the governor of Tamil Nadu who's made a statement. What was the statement? The statement goes on to say, as much as contributions made by the Mahatma Gandhi ji, there were contributions made by Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose ji as well. So he places the wordings of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose far in superior. So when you say Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, he is one of the greatest freedom fighters that country has ever seen. So what does he say? He says that Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose has contributed a lot. It is because of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose alone that the Britishers were able to think in a way that they would not not be able to live in India, they would not be able to control India, they would not be able to sustain in India, primarily because we had the Indian National Army which could actually go against the British and may even take out the British as well. So what they felt was that it was during this particular period, it was not the contribution of Mahatma Gandhi ji alone, but many else have contributed as well. It is in this particular backdrop, significant contributions were made by Subhash Chandra Bose ji and his Indian National Army. So comparing freedom fighters is not right, says the author. So because the governor is holding a constitutional position, compare, yes, all freedom fighters have contributed, but comparison of one freedom fighter with the another freedom fighter is not good, and at the same time everyone has contributed to the freedom struggle and for the independence of the country. It is in this particular backdrop that the author goes on to say that you should not be comparing the freedom fighters. Added to it, all of them have contributed, so the governor, being the constitutional position holder, should have restraint and should have reticence in his wordings. Mr. Ravi has been reported as saying the Quit India movement made little impact on the British decision to leave India. Instead, it was the insecurity felt by the British at Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose forming the Azad Hind government and its army, and in 1946 by the naval mutiny and the Air Force rebellion. So what the author goes on to say that these wordings that the governor of Tamil Nadu has made is with respect to his own personal experience and his own personal perception as well. These perceptions can only be put out when you do not hold a position like a governor. So Mr. Ravi, or the governor of Tamil Nadu, is entitled to put out his perspective and his viewpoint as well. But when he is holding the position of the governor, he should not have made such statement. He can make such statements when he is not holding the position of the governor, but when he is holding such a position, the point or the emphasis is that this person reacts in a very cautious manner, acts in a very cautious manner. His words are in restraint. There is reticence primarily because he is holding a constitutional office. So the author goes on to say, under criticism for his assertions and views, Mr. Ravi clarified that he has the highest respect for Mahatma Gandhi. At the same time, he reiterated his views on the departure of the British from India. There is no doubt that the loyalty of the Indian soldiers in the British Indian Army forces was a principal pillar of their rule in India. So the British were able to continue their rule in India primarily because of few Indians who had utmost allegiance to the British. So it was the Indians who had allegiance to the British, which is why they were able to continue. And once we had the Indian soldiers who were able to hit back, who were able to cross question the British, that is when they felt lightly weakened, is what is this interpretation. So basically anyone would be able to convey anything. If it's political ideology, they would be able to convey, but if it's a constitutional position where neutrality is expected, where parity is expected, acting in the right senses is expected, in that case the governor and the president should not speak about the political ideology whatsoever. They should respect everything, literally everything, and should move away from the political affiliations, is what is this article all about. Now let's look into the next article. This article says winners and losers. What is this article speaking about? The article here is speaking about the elections that takes place in Pakistan. So we have one of the famous statements that is made by Shashi Tharoor ji. What does he say? He says that every country has a army, but it is Pakistan's army which has a country. So it was made in one of the conferences where Shashi Tharoor ji says that in every country what we have is a political democracy. People vote, and ultimately what you have is a cabinet form of the government or the presidential form of the government. It is the government which ultimately controls the military. But what happens in the case of Pakistan? It is the military which actually unfortunately controls the government. Democracy is a myth in Pakistan. Why? Despite people winning elections, they ideally have to control the army. But in Pakistan, it is the Pakistan military and the army which ultimately controls the government. In case there is a civilian government that is elected and they happen to form the government, they have to always match in resonance with the Pakistan's army. In case the Pakistan's army feel that they're deviating from this established principle, in that particular case, cases after cases will be registered against them, and ultimately corruption charges will be imposed on such individuals, and ultimately these individuals will also move out of that particular designated role. So it has happened in the past, it continues to happen, is what is this article all about. Previously, whenever you have the Pakistan's army's role in corruption or they interfering with the government every now and then, they are not able to contribute. Whenever the civilian government feels that they are not able to contribute significantly, why? That is because there is constant interference from the military. Even if they want to take a stand on the military, or they want to take a stand with respect to the international relations as well, or to another country, this will also require a certain permission from the Pakistan's military as well. If at all the Pakistan's military has not given the permission, and if they continue to use and exercise their discretionary power, in that case immediately that political party will be taken off. So this article primarily goes on to say that we have had Nawaz Sharif, who was previously the Prime Minister of Pakistan, who took independent decisions. Whenever he's taken independent decisions, what has happened? Corruption scandals have immediately hit him, and he ultimately goes before the judiciary. The judiciary again is an extended arm of the military, looking at the way its affairs have been said, and ultimately it will conclude that yes, this person is involved in a scam, this person is involved in one of the corruption scandals, and ultimately he will be thrown behind bars. Similarly, what you also see is Imran Khan, who was previously the Prime Minister of Pakistan, also was in good terms with the Pakistan military. He had very good relationship with the Pakistan's army as well, which is why he was able to come to power. And over a period of time, he does realize there is constant interference by the army as well. He does realize that there is constant fiddling and interference by the army. He is not able to take up independent decisions. All the actions of the civilian government will ultimately have to be dependent on the Pakistan military. He was not able to establish a protocol when it comes to the international relations. So he feels that everything has been taken, all the decisions, most of the decisions has been taken by the military. And then he also voices out his opinion as well, that it is the military which is interfering with his affairs. He is not able to take an independent decision. The minute he makes this statement public, that is when Pakistan military feels that this person has to be taken out. So the minute he makes the statement, Pakistan army starts filing a case. Case after cases are put up against him, and he was sentenced to 10 years by a special court in what is called as the Cypher case. So there were two cases that were imposed on him. One is what is called as the Toscana case. The other happens to be the Cypher case. What is the Cypher case? On charges that he leaked state secrets. For example, the Cypher case is where Imran Khan was arrested because he had certain secrets. Whenever you become the Prime Minister or the cabinet or a minister, you take an oath that you respect the sovereignty of a respective country, and you would also ensure that all secrets are kept intact. But what happened in this instant case? According to this instant case, people started identifying, or the military felt that certain secrets of Pakistan, the state secrets, the government secrets or the country's secrets was spilled over, and because of which he has to be thrown behind bars. So the Cypher case is about leaking the state secrets. Added to it, we have the Toscana case. What is the Toscana's case? In Pakistan, what happens? If you are the Prime Minister or a cabinet minister or a person wielding a public institution and holding a designated authority, if there are countries, other countries, they're giving you or gifting you something, you have to immediately start making these public. If at all you do not make public, it means that it is a quid pro quo. It is something to do with the reciprocity. Because you have taken gift, you might have given something else in return to another country. So generally the presumption is that if at all a certain gift is given to the Prime Minister or to the head of the government, in that particular case they have to reveal why this gift was given, why this so-called system was in place, why did he accept the gift. Everything has to be put out. But according to the military and the judiciary, it is seen that Mr. Imran Khan did not put out these gifts that were given to him by other countries, and as a result, maybe he would have given the state secrets to the people, the other country people, and at the same time he might have revealed some secret information, which is why he is thrown behind bars. So what is that we understand from this? This entire process basically means that in Pakistan, democracy is a myth. It doesn't work in Pakistan. Pakistan does not believe in democracy. It only has an army which has huge wealth that it has concentrated, and ultimately it would want to take this wealth and make sure that it has concentration of the power in Pakistan. So if at all the civilian government is in resonance with the Pakistan military, everything will go good. You will have the civilian government, you will also have the military. But if at all it is not in sync with the thought process of the military, it questions the existence of the military, it starts questioning its officials, if it feels that it is interfering constantly, if they voice out the concern, in that particular case, scams of the scams will be unfolding immediately. There will be new cases that will hit the Prime Minister or the person whosoever has uttered it, and ultimately he can be thrown behind bars as well. So the judiciary seems like an extended arm of the military in Pakistan, is what is this article all about. Now let's look into the interesting article that we have for the day. In case there are people who are watching it, in case you have any queries whatsoever, you can put it out in the comment section and I'll answer all your queries as well. The next important article is with respect to the internet shutdown. What is this article speaking about? The article here is speaking about the Indian internet shutdown. This article primarily goes on to say that there are a couple of states in India and the union government has also been using the powers that have been given to it, basically to ensure that internet is suspended in a specific region. Internet is suspended in a region so that there is no undue incident that occurs, there are no public disorder, and as a result they have been making use of this tool time after time. So the article here is speaking about the likely ramifications of the internet shutdown and what is the way forward with respect to the internet shutdown. On January 10, 2020, we have the Supreme Court of India that held that access to information via internet is a fundamental right under the Indian Constitution. So what did it say? It said that if at all we are making use of internet, we are deriving something from the internet. So the information that is accessed from the internet, it happens to be a fundamental right. When we speak about fundamental rights, which are the primary fundamental rights that we have to speak about? What we have to focus is on Article 19 and we also have to focus on Article 21 as well. We will take this point in a detailed way, but whenever we speak about the fundamental rights and right to cutting down the internet, there are these two rights which gets violated. So the Supreme Court has said that in the case of Anuradha Basin vs Union of India, Supreme Court ruled that any restriction on the internet access by the government must be temporary, limited in scope, lawful, necessary and proportionate. The court reiterated that the government's order restricting internet access are subject to review by courts. What do we understand by this? There are two parameters. The Supreme Court said that whenever you are suspending the internet, this suspension of the internet can be done by the executive. That power is given to the executive. But when should the executive make use of this power? Whenever it is not able to control the public order, or for example, there could be a likely ramifications which will hit the country hard. Only in that case, the executive would be able to impose internet shutdown. This should be permanent, this should be temporary in nature and not permanent in nature. This should not be used time after time. It has to be used temporarily, provisionally, only for a specific period of time. And this should be for the right purpose. It should be limited in scope. It should be lawful as well. It should be necessary as well. It should be proportionate as well. And there should not have been any alternative to it. If at all there is an alternative, go to that alternative, meet it, and also ensure that there is minimal impact that can be used for the internet shutdown. This should not be permanent, said the Supreme Court of India. Added to it, if at all there is internet shutdown that happens in any part of the country, this is also subject matter of judicial review. So in case there are people who are voicing their concerns against the internet shutdown, they can also immediately approach the Supreme Court of India. Why? Because it is violating the fundamental rights under Article 19 as well as 21. So this has to be temporary in nature, and if at all this particular process has been executed, the judiciary can review this entire process as to why internet shutdown has happened. Whenever we speak about internet shutdown, what is the law that is being used? When we look into the law, currently suspension of telecom services including internet shutdown is governed by temporary suspension of telecom services public emergency and public safety rules of 2017. This is notified under the Indian Telegraph Act of 1885. The 2017 rules provide for temporary shutdown of telecom services in a region on the grounds of public emergency up to 15 days at once. The 1885 Act empowers the central government to regulate various types of telecom services including internet services and grant licenses. But in the year 2020, it amended the telecom suspension rules of 2017 to limit suspension orders to a maximum of 15 days. So according to the rules, you would be able to suspend the internet. The executive has that provision under these laws, but it is restricted to a maximum of 15 days. Can it further continue? Yes, it can further continue, but for that there has to be legitimate reasons, there has to be valid reasons, and these reasons have to be documented and written and also sent it to relevant departments as well. However, the amendment did not include an obligation on the government to publish orders, nor it include Supreme Court's direction to undertake periodic review of these orders. Now the question is, whenever there is internet shutdown, what are the likely consequences? One, it will obviously lead to violation of the fundamental rights. This happens to be one of the most important factors that we are discussing. When it comes to fundamental rights, which are the fundamental rights that gets violated? One is Article 19, the other is Article 21. I have a question for you. We have something called as the golden triangle when it comes to the fundamental rights. Which are those? One happens to be 19, the other happens to be 21. There is another article which is part of this triangle. Which is it is what you have to put on the comment section. So when it comes to the violation of the fundamental rights, remember we have Article 19 which gets violated. How does Article 19 get violated? Let me give you an example. We have two subsections in that. One is to do with freedom of press. One is to do with freedom of speech as well, which is also part of the freedom of speech and expression, and at the same time we also have freedom of profession as well. So if at all we are speaking of freedom of speech and expression, if at all we are speaking about freedom of press, if at all we are speaking of the freedom of profession as well, this, if it is shut down, the internet is shut down, it leads to violation of all these. How? Let me give you an example. If at all I am writing an article, let's say for example there is suspension of there is internet shutdown, let's say in Bengaluru. So if at all there is internet shutdown in Bengaluru, I am a journalist who is based out of Bengaluru. I require information that is happening in Delhi. So in Delhi there are these journalists who give me the information. On the basis of the information that they give, I would ultimately be able to write an article in the newspaper, or I would also be able to voice out my concern in the visual media as well. But what if there is no internet? I would not be able to receive the article from my colleague or from my friend who is based out of Delhi, and he would not be able to send the articles on the internet or the information. Since I am not able to receive his information on an email, this ultimately means it is leading to violation of press. I would not be able to write an article on it. This ultimately leading to violation of Article 19. Let me give you another example. Let's say if I have to voice out my opinion on YouTube or on Twitter or on Facebook or on X or so on and so forth. In all these parameters, if at all I have to condemn something, if at all I have to put out my viewpoint about a certain action, I should be able to do so. If internet is suspended, freedom of speech and expression is also suspended. I would not be able to voice out my opinion. If at all I have internet, I can come on YouTube immediately, I can can go live immediately. I can also start discussing these things as well. Right now I'm speaking to you, I'm voicing out my concerns, I'm teaching you as well. But what if there is no internet? I would not be able to teach you, I would not be able to express my opinion as well. This ultimately is leading to the violation of speech and expression. So this is another major concern. So when there is press freedom that is taken off, and then there is freedom of speech and expression that is getting violated, it means Article 19 of the Indian Constitution is getting violated. Similarly, we also have profession as well. What is a profession? Let's say for example I am an artist, let's say for example I am a journalist, or let's say for example my entire work is based on the internet. I am a software engineer, I have work from home as well. So what is that I have to do? Because there is work from home, I am working from a remote place for which I require internet. If at all internet is suspended, internet shutdown happens, I would not be able to practice my profession as well. I would not be able to make a livelihood out of it. If at all I am not making a livelihood out of it, my Article 21 of the Indian Constitution gets violated. What does Article 21 speak about? It speaks about right to life and personal liberty and living with dignity. If at all I have to live with dignity, what do I need? I need money as one of the primary sources. How do I make my money? Money is from the profession. If I am not able to derive anything out of the profession, it is also violating Article 21 of Indian Constitution. So Article 21 of the Indian Constitution speaks about right to life, it speaks about personal liberty, it speaks about living with dignity, and I cannot live with dignity if I do not have the monetary derivations. And you are suspending the internet, which is my source, my tool of making a profession out of it, and it ultimately means that this entire section, or that is Article 19 is getting violated, Article 21 is getting violated, freedom of speech and expression, freedom of press, freedom of profession, right to living with dignity is getting violated, is one of the major issues when it comes to this suspension. In 2020, the Indian economy suffered losses to the tune of $2.8 billion due to 129 separate instances of internet suspension, which affected 10.3 million individuals. The internet is a source of information, entertainment, healthcare, education, livelihood, and a platform for the members of the Indian society to interact with each other and the world at large. If at all there is internet suspension that occurs, it results in economic distress, which could lead to as much as $2.8 billion. That happens to be another parameter as well. This is to do with one part, but there are many people who also say that internet shutdown has to be taken up. Why? Because that's a prerogative that is given to the government to safeguard the sovereignty and integrity of the country, and also to prevent violence and riots. Let's say for example there are two people from two different communities and they wield a lot of power. What if they put out an information in the general forum, and then this leads to instigation of a certain section of the people? The social fabric will be divided. This can lead to law and order problem. I make a speech. If this speech goes viral, what if there is a instigation of a certain section of people? To prevent hate speech and fake news that could incite violence and riots, what we can take up is this art of internet shutdown. So to prevent public order issues, to prevent security related issues, we ensure that what we have is the internet shutdown. Apart from this, there are external threats and cyber attacks as well. What happened? Let me give you an example. We had issue with China along the border areas. Whenever we have issues along the border areas, what can China do? China can also can engage in the espionage related activities. So if at all we have the internet, China can eavesdrop into this particular conversation, or it can also cyber attack on some of the critical tools as well. So if this is done, it can sabotage the entire mechanism, and ultimately this can lead to cyber attacks in that particular place. So what is that we have to do? In order to prevent the espionage, or in order to prevent cyber attacks, we can shut down the internet, because these attacks happen via the internet. So if at all I'm able to suspend the internet, cyber attack can be prevented. In fact, when we had Doklam issue and similar such skirmishes along the border areas, China has tried to infiltrate into the Indian systems, hit on the military infrastructure. So we have to be careful. So if at all we can prevent the external threats and the cyber attacks, this cyber internet suspension can also be initiated as well. what is the way forward? We have the disadvantages, we also have some advantages as or why the government needs to do it, but we have to be cautious when it comes to the internet shutdown. As we all know, we cannot live without internet, right? So even if you are using Instagram or Facebook, it has become a habit for us to actually start seeing at the phones every now and then. So without the internet, it becomes very tough. So what does the Supreme Court say? What should the government do? So what we have to do is look for an alternative. Is there an alternative apart from the internet suspension? If there is an alternative, make use of that alternative. Do not suspend the internet, impose maximum amount of penalty on that particular individual, but because of this individual, others should not suffer. So look for an alternative. If at all we have an alternative apart from the internet shutdown, make use of it. So what does the Supreme Court guideline say? The Supreme Court says an order suspending internet services indefinitely is not permissible. It has to be only temporary. In fact, the new rules of 2020 embark on the very same parameter, which is that suspension can happen only with respect to about 15 days. After that, it has to be restored. So if at all we are making any of these, it has to be a maximum period of 15 days. So it should be not indefinite, says the Supreme Court of India. The suspension can be utilized for temporary duration only, the Supreme Court ruled. The top court reiterated that complete broad suspension of the telecom services, whether the internet or otherwise, is a drastic measure. Therefore, it must be considered by the state only if necessary and unavoidable. Only if it is necessary and unavoidable, we do not have an alternative parameter, only then internet shutdown can be taken up, says the Supreme Court of India. Finally, the Supreme Court directed the centre to publish all orders in force, any future orders under suspension 144 CRPC and for suspension of telecom services, including internet, to enable the affected persons to challenge it before the High Court or appropriate forum. So if at all the central government or the state government is suspending the internet, they should release a notification or in a publication as to why they have taken this decision, so that if at all people are hurt by it, if at all their rights have been exhausted, in that case they would be able to approach a High Court or the relevant forum for the same, so that this can be addressed. So the internet shutdown can happen, may happen, but that has to be temporary in nature, or else if at all it is violating the fundamental rights, then they can approach the Supreme Court or the High Court, and the relevant forum is what is this article all about. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. So if you're liking these initiatives, please do hit on the like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and also share it with your fellow aspirants as well. This is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.